puede escuchar, el otro tiene dificultades y el otro no puede.
It is my special privilege and opportunity
Es mi oportunidad
to introduce our two guest speakers for today.
a presentar a los dos oradores de ahora.
First is Chelsea Hall, who is a certified interpreter.
Que es una intérprete acreditada.
And we also have Leslie Martinez,
También tenemos a Leslie Martinez,
who has a bachelor's degree in social work.
que tiene un bachillerato en...
And she also identifies as a DeafPlus person.
Y también se identifica como...
So, without further delay, I will let them take it away.
Y sin más que
Thank you.
All right.
Voy a comenzar. Gracias. Caleb, ¿me puedes escuchar?
Okay, we'll bring up the PowerPoint now.
Vamos a poner el PowerPoint, la presentación.
All right. We'll just give everyone a moment to make whatever screen adjustments they need.
Para que hagan
Leslie, are you ready?
la pantalla que necesiten.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and introduce the topic for today.
Okay. El tema de hoy
Sí, vamos a presentar.
We're talking on what is an interpreting partnership with the DeafPlus community by Chelsea and myself.
I absolutely love this topic, and I love the idea.
Me encanta este tema de brindar apoyo a las personas que están en esta
Instead of talking to someone, I really appreciate the opportunity to be in partnership as an ally. You know, it's somebody's job to wear that ally hat. But if the opportunity arises to really be able
Es importante
to offer that support and collaboration, and I want to be able to take that opportunity, right? Not just sit back
No solo
and interpret.
sentados e interpretar.
I'm excited to do this with you.
Estoy entusiasmada.
Okay, we should take a moment and thank NorCal. Thank you for allowing us in this space and the time and the chance to take a deeper dive into the research and see how it applies and how we can best support.
¿Cómo podemos apoyarnos?
So I really want to thank Diane and Kristen for allowing us this opportunity today.
Por darnos esta oportunidad.
And Leslie, I want to give you a special thanks as well because you challenged me. It's a bit awkward role for me not to use spoken language. And you were an advocate for yourself to ask me to not use spoken language today.
Porque quieren que tengamos una-
ASL is my second language, so I give a bit of a caveat there, a little disclaimer before we get started.
all good.
Next slide.
Yeah, let's go.
Quiero empezar con esto.
Okay, next slide.
So, la siguiente presentación es hablando de quiénes son las personas que están.
Okay, it looks like the technology is working out. Do you want to introduce this? Okay.
Hablar de esto.
I would like to introduce my co-presenter and partner, Chelsea Hull. She's native to Southern California and has more than 25 years experience in deaf education and is an ASL interpreter. And she's been working to, she's a DeafPlus mother, and she has two children with special needs, and she has both lived experiences and is passionate with education and partnering with various organizations, making them accessible and equitable for the deaf and DeafPlus communities, alliance with the community as much as possible, and system change for the community by the community.
ayudando a la comunidad.
Thank you, Leslie. Honestly,
Gracias, Leslie.
I think it's been about 30 years. I know we look young, but it's been about 30 years.
Trabajando 30 años.
And I'm really impressed that I've seen the profession grow to empower others. Not because it's not about me. It's about how we can collaborate and encourage each other to keep growing and making those changes. Because those changes spread throughout the organization.
Yeah, and it spreads. We're learning.
Truly. All right, great. Now it's my honor to introduce Leslie, who has a bachelor's in social work as well as a master's. She identifies as DeafPlus. She enjoys community events and was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. She now works at the School for the Deaf in a nighttime program. I highly respect that work. That night work is very challenging to interact with the deaf school. I knew right away when I first met Leslie what a truly inspiring and motivated person she was. She encourages people to become interpreters and is constantly encouraging folks to enhance their skills throughout the field of interpreting. What else is there? I'm wondering if I'm catching all the points. I really want to focus on Leslie's part. He focuses on interpreters to feel very confident in the field.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide.
La siguiente diapositiva dice.
Oh, is this one me?
Esta también es para mí.
Okay.
Les voy a hablar un poquitico acerca de esto.
So, just a brief description here.
Es una descripción corta de lo que vamos a hacer en esta presentación.
Interpreting in partnership with the DeafPlus community. There's an old model of interpreting that is typically more robotic, which means that the interpreter comes and interprets and doesn't take any ownership and leaves. But times have changed, and luckily, I grew up and was able to witness and see those first interpreters. I have so many wonderful stories of people at that time that provided my mother access as a DeafPlus person. I'm very grateful for those interpreters. At that time, in that day and age, we're talking about the 80s, the role of interpreters was quite different. And we've seen that shift over the years, where they would show up and interpret, but now creating a bond and offer a bit of teaching. So again, we're seeing the system improve through socialization. And through that, providing better access. And we're moving away from the one-size-fits-all box that interpreters used to fill. Instead of thinking about that job, now they have to consider if they're qualified for it. They often don't get a lot of information either, but they still have to think how they can interpret and how they'll approach that and collaborate with a DeafPlus client. And that, in a nutshell, is our presentation for today.
Yes,
next slide. And I'll turn it over to Leslie.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and let you have an opportunity to tell us what your perspective is and explain what DeafPlus is and recognize the various needs and diverse needs of the community.
And again, I just said the second point here, but how it's appropriate for an interpreter to act as an ally with the DeafPlus community and not take over. Being mindful to be respectful of those boundaries and offer some education through a gentle approach. We'll also identify strategies for collaboration. Leslie and I might model some of those. And some ideas might come to you throughout the presentation. And hopefully you'll see some of that today as we share ideas and strategies, so that as parents watch this, you can be empowered to have that conversation and hopefully recall some of the ideas and strategies and practices that we'll offer today.
Sounds good. Next slide.
La siguiente, por favor, la siguiente diapositiva.
Okay, so what is DeafPlus?
¿Qué es un sordo con discapacidad?
DeafPlus means individuals who themselves are deaf, hard of hearing, or who have more than one disability. Disability can be various, like CP, cognitive, epilepsy, any kind of medical or physical condition that influences their daily lives and communication. For example, myself, I have spina bifida, and that means that I am disabled, but I'm a DeafPlus disabled person.
And you know, for the research for the two of us, in thinking about my mom, I'll hold back on some of that, but we've talked about that. And that's amazing because my mom identifies, and I respect how she identifies, but wow, my mom has a very severe heart condition. And that is the co-occurring disability with her being deaf. So I feel like my mom is still here with us as we present this. So we might discuss a bit more of that later.
Yeah, we can wait to share.
Yeah, this topic was not around in the 70s and 80s. It was not discussed. It was really just emerging during those times. And so I know that so many of my friends would say that their children, once they found out that they were deaf, later found out that they were also had autism. And that was a change. Then the child would identify as DeafPlus. And that's a positive thing to see more and more of. Various diagnoses coming about. That gives us a chance to really identify appropriately.
I agree. Next slide. Please. Okay. The reason that I think this video about ableism, how many of you have heard of that term? I think it would be a good example of what DeafPlus means. And you can watch the video, and it's a voiceover.
Ableism is discrimination or prejudice against people with disabilities. It happens when society assumes that people with disabilities are less capable or valuable than those without disabilities. This belief can lead to unfair treatment, barriers, and negative attitudes that limit opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Ableism can show up in many ways, such as in how buildings are designed, how people are treated at school or work, or even in the language people use. It often stems from a lack of understanding or awareness about the abilities and potential of people with disabilities. A common example of ableism is the lack of accessibility in public spaces. For instance, when buildings do not have ramps or elevators, people who use wheelchairs may find it difficult or impossible to enter. This creates a physical barrier that excludes them from participating fully in society. Another example can be found in schools when teachers or classmates assume that a student with a disability, such as dyslexia, cannot perform as well as their peers. Instead of providing the right support, they might lower their expectations or exclude the student from certain activities, which can harm the student's confidence and growth. A third example is the use of language that reinforces stereotypes about disabilities. Words like crazy or lame are often used casually, but they can be hurtful and reinforce negative ideas about people with mental health conditions or physical disabilities. Even jokes or comments made without harmful intentions can contribute to a culture of ableism. Ableism has serious effects on individuals, both emotionally and physically. People with disabilities who face discrimination often feel excluded, undervalued, or misunderstood. This can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, or depression, especially when they are repeatedly told, directly or indirectly, that they are less capable. Ableism also limits opportunities, making it harder for people with disabilities to access education, jobs, or public services. For example, if a workplace doesn't provide accommodations like flexible schedules or assistive technology, talented individuals may be unable to contribute fully, which can also harm their financial stability. On a societal level, ableism creates barriers to inclusion and equality. When people with disabilities are excluded, society misses out on their talents, ideas, and contributions. It also reinforces harmful stereotypes, leading to a lack of awareness and understanding about disabilities. Over time, this creates a cycle where barriers remain in place, preventing progress toward a more inclusive world. Communities that do not address ableism may struggle with inequality and fail to support all their members. Addressing ableism starts with increasing awareness and education. Schools, workplaces, and communities can teach people about the importance of inclusion and the challenges faced by those with disabilities. When people learn to recognize ableist attitudes and behaviors, they are more likely to change how they act and advocate for better treatment of others. For example, training programs or campaigns can show how small changes, like using respectful language or designing accessible spaces, can make a big difference. Creating inclusive environments is another important solution. Governments and organizations can implement policies that ensure accessibility, such as requiring ramps, elevators, and captions for videos. In schools, teachers can provide accommodations, like extra time for tests or alternative ways to participate in activities to help students with disabilities succeed. Workplaces can offer flexibility and assistive tools so that employees with disabilities can thrive.
I like the word thrive. Do you want to expand and talk about that?
What did you want me to add?
Maybe some lived experience that you wanted to share? Any thoughts?
Okay. I can add my experience related to that. Wow. I've experienced a lot of barriers. And for example, at work, just a normal, you can't be upset with people because people don't realize this. It's important that we educate.
Mhm.
But I think it's very important. For example, at work, it happened to me. I was using the microwave, and the microwave is, way up high, and I couldn't reach it. And I didn't realize I would have that issue. And I learned to advocate for myself, and that's why I'm here to teach you how to advocate for yourselves and your children, and it's very important. And it's with love. And I advocate for myself. I tell them, the microwave is really high. What can we do? So they found another microwave that was lower that I could reach and be able to use the microwave to warm up my food.
I was starting to think about my mom during that, and I remember so many instances where my mom was looking for a job and ready to apply, but experienced so much discrimination because she couldn't express herself, and she could not use the phone, and so then was not hired for those jobs. And that tends to affect your everyday situations all day, every day, for employment opportunities and lots of other areas. And in interpreting situations, how we as an interpreters love feedback, want to help parents and that are parents of DeafPlus children.
pueden sentirse
We're,
mejor.
we're the best at having those
Hacer
ideas and can offer that to parents.
Ideas y ofrecerle esas ideas a los padres.
Right? Leslie, we talked about that. It's okay for the interpreter to ask,
This belief can lead to unfair
Yes.
how can I best accommodate your child?
That the interpreter asks the deaf person or the DeafPlus person, how do you want me as an interpreter to interact with your situation? And made me feel, oh, empowered. You are thinking about what I need, and it's more of a collaboration. It doesn't hurt to ask. It's important to ask. And so you know how to work with a deaf person.
And again, in the beginning of today's presentation, I mentioned number 2 about interpreters used to be like robots. They would just show up and interpret and not take any ownership over the process. And that's okay. Many DeafPlus people and deaf and hard of hearing clients want us and themselves are not ready to share with the interpreter a litany of things. And so the interpreter needs to take responsibility to ask and tell them, let me know what you want. It's important, right, Leslie? Like if it's a stage type situation and we have 2 audiences and 1 stage, if I come in early and I arrive to get things set up, I need to know where to set up for you and for the DeafPlus client. I don't know if they're reliant on one hearing aid over another, or if they have any vision loss, and maybe I should move to a different area. So you need to take time to set up.
Also, you never know when the interpreter is going to show up. The DeafPlus person or a person in a wheelchair, like me, for example, the interpreter's way up there. How am I going to get up there with the interpreter? How's that going to happen? So it's very important to match each individual. It's important to have the interpreter right there in front, and I can tell where I want the interpreter to sit, and not too much light too.
So for interpreters, it's really very important that interpreters are flexible and are able to educate and collaborate with their hearing clients to let them know. We arrive early, always, we always say, I'm always late, but you need to be early, and that's on time so that you have an opportunity to set up. If I can remember my clients maybe needing me to sit in a certain spot as opposed to standing, my clients would require me to be in a different space than what might be. Also, for the autistic population, I have 2 children myself that are autistic as well as ADHD. And let me tell you, that can trigger a lot of things for both of them in the environment. Maybe sound, or if it's a deaf person that's autistic, they might have less facial expression, and so they might miss a lot of things from the interpreter. And so the interpreter needs to take a step back and be able to collaborate and talk with them and understand, be flexible, be open-minded.
That's so important.
Hey, next slide. We could go on and on about all this about all night, I think.
Yeah, we could. So many things to show.
Yes, you want to take this one?
Okay, I think it would be good for us to try and show what the percentage is for individuals with disabilities. Like, for example, 60% are deaf or hard of hearing. Do you want me to explain all of it, or
¿Explicamos todo?
Well, for me to emphasize that 40% of deaf and hard of hearing people have an additional disability. And I think that's the point of that column, is that we are not being inclusive. And so I really wanted to touch on that throughout the education system. And I think that's coming up in later slides. But it's important to know that that 60% of deaf people that don't have disabilities means there's 40% that do. And so we need to take note of all of these various possible additional disabilities.
It's interesting to see the percentages of different disabilities. Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think we're all part of that community, right? It's collective. Yeah, next slide.
La siguiente diapositiva.
So I started my career teaching. I was very young. I was just 21 or 22 when I started teaching high school. Oh my. And it's so important that we have the skills to assess through comprehensive interdisciplinary medical and educational teams. It's crucial that they have specialists and neurologists, geneticists, audiologists. And it's nice to have those experienced people supporting teachers who can really advocate for the children's needs so that they can reach their goals and reach their full potential. We can't expect children to develop here, but if a child is missing out, then they will develop to a lower standard. But we need to raise those expectations and give them a chance, because they will be able to use their full potential.
Yes,
Did you want to add to that? I wonder?
No.
Okay. Again, we're seeing a variety of diagnoses here of the disabilities that are in the deaf population. Next slide.
Okay, la siguiente diapositiva.
You can watch this video, and this is about an individual's experience as a DeafPlus parent. And this is their story.
Hey, we'll go ahead and play.
Wow.
Es muy triste.
I think a program like this here at NorCal, what they're doing to provide a specific place for parents to find that support. I wish my mother had that and her parents had that before her, because they searched out for support. I can remember those stories of my grandma saying they had no support and they only found one place that my mom could be educated. And so they just had to take whatever was taught at that time, whatever method they chose. And so now times have changed. You know, in thinking about the word inclusion that she mentioned, inclusion, I like that shift in perspective. It's not including people, but after the fact. But in reality, it's before things happen. So oftentimes schools, like where my children go, I can just put on my mom hat for a moment, is going into the school and teaching them about autism and inclusion. It doesn't mean that you have to invite my child to the party. It's thinking here how this particular place is accessible. If they don't have interpreters during recess, yikes, that's terrible. And you know, I've seen that oftentimes at schools, interpreters take a break during recess, and that's valuable social time that deaf kids are missing out on. So I'm wondering how we consider what we're providing for those opportunities for them to feel a sense of belonging.
Cuando uno está haciendo un sentimiento de pertenecer, de estar allí.
Anything you want to add, or should we move on?
Excellent.
Vamos al siguiente diapositiva. Bueno, aquí hay una lista de...
So now I'm going to put on my advocate's hat. I do have some experience being a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, and this is a topic I'd like to talk about. There are 13 qualifying categories, and I remember when I started teaching almost 30 years ago, I mean, I hate to laugh, sorry about that, but we used to say in the field, oh, no big deal. Just need to check a box. Just pick anyone and check a box. I'm so embarrassed that I used to say that. But really, we have to change that way of thinking. And today, I still experience parents, when they look at these 13 categories, we have children with obvious hearing loss that are hard of hearing or deaf, either one. And then we have additional disabilities. So let's go ahead to the next slide, because I'll expand on the definitions. Oh, okay. We'll hold on that thought. So now with autism, I had to steal this great graphic because it is so clear. Oh, it is amazing. The child that was identified later in life with a hearing loss already has all of these. They're not responding to their name being called. They don't respond to auditory sounds in their environment. It looks like they're just ignoring people in their environment. Whereas really, in my experience, my two children fit all of these characteristics. And they develop spoken language later. And sometimes with autism, we do see language development come on later, sometimes at the age of 1.5 to 2, even 3 years old. And that is typical. for children that were born with autism. Also, transitions. Sometimes a deaf child that's not autistic can still struggle with transitions because they're not exposed to that language. They don't know what's happening, and so they miss out on a lot of that incidental learning and incidental language. It's just natural for them to see them struggle with behaviors during times of transition. And so, again, we go back to this, looking at language development and autism. It's really hard because they overlap. I believe that we're seeing more and more accurate diagnoses with hearing loss and autism today. And I'm a proud mom of 2 autistic kids. So really, I'm excited to see this coming out. And this is not anything derogatory. This is who my family is. And so I'm struggling. I'm not lying. This is a struggle. But we have to come to acceptance and understanding. It is a blessing in my house. Next slide. I want to be mindful of the time, Leslie. So this is a quote from a parent. I'll go ahead and sign this. As a single mother of a DeafPlus child, I wish there was more empathy and compassion within the educational system. I recognize that many people cannot easily relate to our experiences. But that gap often leads to misunderstanding and a tendency to box children in based on a diagnosis rather than seeing their strengths. I hope schools and educators adopt a more neuro-affirming approach, one that values learning and a child's ability instead of focusing solely on perceived limitations. So this quote just values the whole child instead of their limitations. Oh, Leslie, it's just heart-wrenching. Yes. I'm curious, what are your feelings? Do you have any feelings about this as you experience the educational system growing up?
Yes, I have many different kinds of experience with education when I was growing up, yeah. It wasn't easy. I'm trying to think, there's so many to list. Do you remember I discussed with you, remember which one I talked to you about before?
I hope you don't mind if I share something. But you were placed in a center for a school for the deaf in a rural school. Do you want to talk about that experience?
Mainstream school? Is that what you mean, the mainstream school?
I believe. No, the CADI Center.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. I remember when I was young, I remember my parents took me to CID, an old school, but then my mom realized that it wasn't a good fit for me. So awful to share this story. I shared it with Chelsea. We were talking about sitting and having this lady come by, and she had big red lips. And I had to put my hands under my legs because I couldn't understand her. And I was crying. So my mom was like, no. So we found another school, a special school district, where they had a deaf program where I could learn signing, ASL, and educated together at that time in the 80s. It was a good experience. But now things have changed dramatically. Why the change? They're more spread out. There's hearing schools with interpreters, and I was graduated from high school and I was the only deaf person or DeafPlus person, and everyone else was hearing. Out of 300 hearing students That was a big class in high school. So, and no interpreter.
And that really dovetails really nice to the next slide. So we'll move on to the next slide now. Yeah, it makes me think about my mom and her experience being placed in a mainstream program and being forced to lip read her teachers.
Next slide, please.
Okay, it just so happens that some of the parents watching today and learning about those 13 qualifying categories here in the state. So I pulled this information directly from CVE's website, their definition of hard of hearing. Again, oftentimes the qualifiers rely on assessment results to initiate the plan, whether they do or don't show an impact. And I really want to focus on the adverse, that word adverse impact for the child's educational performance. I believe that's at the heart of this, because I've experienced a lot in support meetings, that more as an advocate over the years. And I love supporting families. Sometimes what I see and experience in the teams is that they're stuck because the reports show that the child has a hearing ability and they sign just fine. There are no gaps, there's no delay, everything is moving just fine. And so there are no services for the IEP. And oftentimes parents are grief-stricken. And I'm curious, Leslie, I want to directly ask you, I relate it to my mom's experience. She had hearing aids every day, as well as a medically complicated situation health-wise. But her hearing level did not adversely impact her education. But once she woke up, she put those hearing aids on and she behaved differently. So I don't know if I'm saying to bring that up to a school district to change their system, but we need the system set up that we can follow so that people can be qualified. And at the same time, we need them to clearly tell us the difference. What are the effects of hearing loss every day? Maybe put some thoughts in the chat, if you will. Next slide, please. All right, this is another definition here. This is the definition of deafness. Typically, this tends to focus on the decibel loss, anything greater than 70 decibel loss. And typically at the IEP meeting with a DeafPlus child, they will see that they qualify as deaf. And then in the next slide, we can move on. Think about the multiple impairment category. Next slide. Oh, there it is. We also have this category as well, deaf-blind. And maybe that is a better fit for the child if they're deaf-blind. And they have that written down. Next slide. Oh, yikes, I'm looking at the time. Let's move on. Next slide, please. Autism is another category. That might be the primary disability, might be deafness, and the secondary disability could be autism. But what if the teen prefers to have autism as the primary and deafness as the secondary disability? I have seen many parents want deafness set as the primary disability, and that's because communication is impacted by their being deaf. Next slide, please. Yeah, we need to really emphasize that.
This video is very, very short. So go ahead. I don't want to take up
For
too
quite
much
some
time.
time, before moving into town, I was a married housewife and a stay-home mom, largely because of challenges to finding a job. Similarly, I experienced barriers finding interpreters for my day-to-day life. For instance, whenever I needed to see a doctor, my mother had to interpret for me. It was an awful experience until I moved to Chicago, where I had a surprisingly pleasant experience. There was support available for me, and they have interpreters. I have learned so much through sign language, and life is much better now than it was back then.
Yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
I wanted to share that because it's very touching. You know, the reason why I wanted to become a DeafPlus social worker and advocate, it's why I think of myself, DeafPlus. I love to help people, and there's not enough deaf social workers out there. We need more deaf social workers to provide more resources, because in small towns and big cities, they have enough and enough interpreters, but compared to a small town, there's just not enough. So we need to improve that.
All right, next slide.
Next slide, please.
Maybe we could just move on because of time. Yeah, there's a visual language. Did you want to say about that?
Yeah. Not all deaf-blind people are the same. They're individual, and we have to meet what their needs are. Some deaf-blind prefer to have an interpreter sit across from them, and so very close, not too far. And DeafPlus, same when they sign. Some prefer that space.
Yeah, the idea again goes back to partnering, collaboration. Ask the deaf person.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Yes. It's important to have a dark colored shirt, a skin contrasting shirt, and a dark background, because the eyes can be really, really sore afterwards. And so, like bright color white, no, avoid that. So, when you sign, you just want to respect the deaf-blind person.
Yeah, I'm very strict about the type of clothing I wear at work. I know that if a deaf person tells me that there's some vision loss, I do not wear anything low cut. I definitely wear it right up to my neck because I want to be as clear as possible. Sometimes I have had an experience with a DeafPlus person who has preferred close signing because their eyes are losing ability, and then they switch to tactile. But if the interpreter is willing and flexible to go back and forth.
I understand how interpreters experience interpreting, going on and on and on. Like at a concert, they go on for an hour and a half. Wow, I can't even imagine how the interpreter feels.
Yes, we have to, I believe, again, to be very strict about it. I believe one needs to be humble and willing. When I was a young interpreter, that was a different story, but I've learned a lot. You must be willing. Because when my mental capacity, even when I was a great interpreter, it starts to degrade after about 20 minutes. It can be mentally tiring.
Why you need to have a team.
You have to advocate for a team. That's right.
Yes, team interpreting.
Yes, blessed by our clients.
Sigamos.
Let's move on.
Right. And that Oh, the CPC. Yes, the Code of Conduct. I did want to emphasize, many parents might not know, wow, it's really important that interpreters take an oath of confidentiality. And that's primary. A lot of experienced interpreters don't share that information. And this type of presentation, I can take off that interpreter hat and be a professional, professionally share about my interpreting experiences, and that's okay. I think sometimes we're scared to share everything because of that confidentiality, but times have changed, and we are able to take on that role and model how to partner with our community. So I'm hoping to see more of that at a professional level. There are several trainings where I truly appreciate hearing from deaf professionals sharing those different experiences and the human experience. But so often we're not able to talk with each other. There's so much respect and so much confidentiality and ethics involved in our field that still, I think often we try to balance and navigate between those two. You might look at me and think it's funny, but I love to respect our community. So, yeah.
Exactly.
A deaf interpreter is someone who is deaf, has ingrained linguistic and cultural knowledge, plus has been trained as a professional interpreter. There is a persistent misconception about what deaf interpreters actually do. So, a majority of deaf people don't see it as a benefit. They say things like, oh, deaf interpreters are for people that don't know ASL, or people who aren't as savvy as I am, or for deaf-blind people. But the truth is that deaf interpreters can be beneficial in a wide variety of settings. Deaf interpreters can work with hearing interpreters to ensure appropriate and accurate delivery of services. For example, deaf interpreters have interpreted in graduate school programs for deaf graduate students. The students reported finally being able to understand the content easily instead of having to work hard to decipher the language coming from a hearing interpreter. In this case, the deaf interpreter delivered content in a way that was easy on the eyes. Deaf interpreters also work in K-12 environments where they serve as enhanced language models. In medical and legal situations, they can ensure accurate delivery without causing misunderstanding or damaging mistakes. Deaf interpreters can provide interpreting for conferences in order to meet the needs of a wide variety of audience members. You can see all of the many scenarios and settings where deaf interpreters bring a huge benefit. Let me share some examples of how having a deaf interpreter results in a positive impact. They are able to catch even nuanced expressions and know if the deaf person is or is not understanding, then make adjustments as needed. They can identify and understand quick, nuanced comments and expressions often missed by hearing interpreters, and ensure the message is relayed. Deaf people have deaf extralinguistic knowledge, abbreviated as DELK, meaning they have lived and breathed, navigating life through systemic oppression and breaking down barriers. They must be comfortable detaching from the English vocabulary and grammar to truly translate from English to ASL. They can break away from the English form, processing the meaning of the message in ASL as they do the work of translating. They have a host of options to use to match the meaning of the source language so that the delivery is clear and precise, and are proficient translating to and from English and ASL. They can translate from written text. For example, an ASL coach used in the theater will translate a script from English to ASL. They have knowledge on many topics so that analogies can be made that apply to a deaf person's schema of understanding. They are comfortable using depiction, classifiers, and a use of space in order to provide a clear message.
Yeah. This is related to this. I have one deaf, blind she has CP, and I found this information. I thought it would be great to share with you all. So, because she explained to me her story and her experience when she was in school with interpreters, and sometimes she would have to, the teacher would get her in trouble because she couldn't look at the teacher. She had to look at the interpreter. So, sometimes the brain needs to take a break. And when you have CP, that's very interesting.
Yes, so now putting on my interpreter hat from that perspective, I'm not really comfortable telling a deaf person to look at me.
Right. It's not your job as the interpreter.
Yeah, just interpret. But how do I become more large with my sign language and more expressive in my facial expressions? I want to respect them. But with children that have autism, I don't want anyone to be told to force to be looking at the interpreter.
The important thing and the key is patience. Give it time, wait for them to look at you, and then start interpreting.
Yes, everyone throughout their processing, they all take something different. Some people really gravitate towards technology, and that's how their mind works.
That's right.
They can pick up lots of different things. And the DeafPlus community has patience, and we need to respect that.
Okay, next slide.
All right, this is on you.
Well, I wanted to give you a perspective of interpreters for a DeafPlus person, what to do and what not to do. And don't give your opinion. Don't offer any advice, in even a roundabout way. The important thing is the DeafPlus person if they can speak for themselves. Okay, that's it. Never share confidential information. Never use the phrase deaf and dumb. Never demand that the DeafPlus person look at you. Just don't do that. And never say, oh, never mind, or refuse to relay information. Like if you're with family and you're sitting there and everybody's talking and they don't sign or don't know sign, and you notice that they're laughing, and you say, what are you laughing about? Oh, no, I'll tell you later. No. It makes you really left out. And the important thing is if they don't know sign language, what you do is you can write back and forth, or you can gesture. Yes, somehow communicate. What to do that is important, speak directly to the person, look directly at them, speak normally. The important thing is having enough light. I struggle with that. And let the person have time to process their response, facial expression, reactions. They might be ready to just keel over asleep. I need to keep their attention and keep them awake.
Yeah, if the presenter is very monotone, it's very easy to fall asleep. I really love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for setting up that slide, Leslie. I think that this is really great information to share. So I did want to save some time for questions, and so we'll get through the next couple slides really quickly.
Yes. Yeah, these are some support groups for parents with DeafPlus children, and they've been started already.
Yes, thank you again for allowing us to present today. Next slide.
Yes. Okay. I'm excited to share just a quick story about I'm going to bless my wonderful parents, born deaf with disability, spina bifida. Obviously, you can see my picture. My mom's holding me. She has passed away in 1996. I was 16. My mom wasn't DeafPlus, but she was a very strong advocate. And she fought for herself and she fought for me, and seriously ill with diabetes. So she had to fight for herself and for me, and she gave it all her heart. My dad, love you, Dad. He's still advocating ever since, including now. He's here now in this meeting watching me as my advocate. Thank you. Love you, Dad. And
yes, you relate so much to your mom.
I wanted to explain also, I've been married for 12 years, almost 12 years. Yeah, wow, April 5th. My husband is a DeafPlus, and he has muscular dystrophy. And I'm blessed to have such a wonderful man in my life. And you see the picture of me driving as hand controls. I want to thank my dad, who taught me independence, because I'll never forget, that's the story of my dad. I will never forget that. It really impacted me, and he taught me independence. Do you want to share your story?
Yeah, I think I shared a bit earlier, but if there's any questions, I'm just very grateful that my mom taught me to accept everyone and to never judge people, regardless of how they grew up. And so I look at the diversity of disabilities out there, and I feel very blessed. I look for inclusion as acceptance and understanding different people's lived experience. And I think it's more based on an attitude of inviting people and shifting the attitude towards respecting all people out there. It's just natural to be inclusive and to collaborate, just in general, not just in the field of DeafPlus or being deaf, but just in general. We could all benefit from a bit more unity in our society now. I think we can all agree to that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, are there any questions? I know we are over time, but if there's any questions from folks online? Oh, yes, and there's our references. So, Leslie, I really enjoyed presenting with you. Thank you for partnering with me.
Me too.
And hopefully, if we present again, then you can look for other presenters.
I would love to do that and empower people and let that spread.
Yes, you said that Leslie was willing. You all saw it. She's very willing.
Oh, yes. I so want to be an advocate for the deaf community.
Yes, I'd love to see you present more and more out there. This is Kristen. So thank you so much, Leslie and Chelsea. Wow, what a beautiful presentation you both had. I'm so impressed. It's so important to hear your lived experience, Leslie. Really, it's just so important to have someone to look up to, another DeafPlus person out there, to look up and seeing deaf adults, DeafPlus people, that they can do it, they can succeed. Wow. And Leslie's saying, yes, thank you for having me. Chris is saying, okay. So thank you to the interpreting team and all the interpreters that work together, and Diane and Jermaine, all of the tech support for the day. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Chelsea's saying bye-bye. Thanks again. Bye, y'all.
Gracias.